Well, shalom everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I just completed another amazing book called The Taste of Maharal, which is a book that's all about a very fascinating Jewish sage that lived in the 16th century around the medieval era. And many of you would possibly, who are aware of this guy, would no doubt likely be aware of the legend surrounding him in the creation of the golem, which he is said to have created during a time of severe unrest amongst his Jewish community in Prague, which is sort of Central Europe. And it's quite an interesting story. I have a video on that, but I also have, what's more important, I think, I also have a video on the man himself, as sort of a short documentary that goes into a lot of what he has contributed to Israel and to the Jewish people that is quite unparalleled. And he was a very fascinating individual, and his wife, which I do focus on quite a bit in the video, is an amazing person in her own right in terms of how she supported her husband, in terms of providing him practical support and spiritual support as well, often poring over a lot of his gleanings, a lot of his writings, editing them and so on. So she was sort of like a powerhouse in of herself. Now, the reason I'm doing a book review on this book is because a lot of Rabbi Yehuda Lo ben Zalal, which is his full name, Batzalal, I think that's how you pronounce it. He wrote many influential works that had an impact on the Jewish world, a very positive impact. His most noteworthy being Netivot Olam, which was written in 1596, and it's sort of centered on Jewish ethics. My arm's getting tired, so I'm going to put that down. But the reason why I thought this book is something worth doing a book review for is because many of Rabbi Yehuda Lo's works are perhaps pretty hard for a person to get through who has no sort of formal sort of training in Jewish halakha and Musa and just basics and understanding of Judaism. You would probably find it quite a hard slog to get through, and not all of his works have been translated into English, and those of his works that have been translated into English, you can never be 100% sure that a lot of them are as accurate as they can be, although I'm sure many of them are. And so somebody that's sort of wanting to become acquainted with this man, not just in terms of finding out about him and the legend of the golem, but just actually finding out about, what made him so special, this book is the place to start. It's The Taste of the Maharal. It's the Brackfield edition. I don't know what the Brackfield edition means, whether that means there's another edition that has come out that sort of isn't as good as this one for whatever reason. It's put out by Mosaic Press, and I think this edition is 2022, so I think that's roughly when it came out. But it's a great book to introduce you to this sage, because it kind of covers all of the major topics that he focused on, well, most of the major topics, I won't say all, throughout his life, and they're broken up into sections, and the sections are further broken down into chapters. And so they're very, very quick to get through these chapters that are inside these sections, and all up there are 8 sections, and they're divided into a section pertaining to Adam, the first man. Section 2 is the Jewish nation. 3 is interpersonal relations, exile and redemption, which is a kind of the subject that the Maharal is kind of known for. Like the Kofetz Chaim, he's kind of known for his works in the area of Lashon Hara, and aside from the golem, which sort of follows him around this sort of the topic, for better or for worse. He's sort of more known for his kind of fixation on the preservation of the Jews in exile. So that's sort of one of his major areas. Section 5 is the Torah itself. Section 6 is Lashon HaKodesh, so looking at the Hebrew language. And then section 7 is Tefillah, prayer. And section 8 is Chazal and Agadatah, which is the Chazal is the Jewish sages from the Mishnaic and Talmudic era, and he was a huge advocacy of their authority, and the Agadatah is non-legalistic narratives and parables, and things that are sort of sourced from midrashic stories and things. So there's 8 sections altogether, and you will it's a page turner. You'll just go from one subject to the other, and you never linger long enough on a subject to kind of be bored. Not that any of the subjects are boring. They're all uniquely interesting and profound, but you'll just find that this is just such a great introductory work if you're thinking about getting a hold of one of his sefers. I think this book is sort of the best place to start, because that will give you a good overview of a huge cross-section of his work. I'll read you a few passages on a few various subjects to whet your appetite. What are we going to look at here? There's some really interesting subjects. He talks about the giant Og in section 8, the last section, and there is a midrashic story that describes Moshe's height, how Moshe flew into the air, and the length of the axe that he used to cut Og's ankle. And it's quite a bizarre story, particularly given that the actual story itself specifies the heights of things, and they're quite sort of unrealistic sounding. And never in any other book have I ever read the breakdown of that midrash with Og's death so well sort of laid out, and it goes over a few pages, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just keep that in the back of your mind, that you're going to get a very good understanding of that at times perplexing story that you may be familiar with. I'm just trying to find something that really kind of resonated with me, and there's plenty of things. There's too many things. I'm going to have to just jump in and pick a spot. Okay, this is the generation of Mashiach, and so this is section 4, which is his topic, his sort of the topic he's known for, exile and redemption. And this is, they're not really sort of named as chapters, but this is sort of part 4 or 5 of that section. But they're not really given chapter titles, so they're just parts of the section. So the sections are broken up into parts rather than chapters. It's a bit confusing the way I've described it, but each section is divided into different topics. So the generation of Mashiach: who decides what is normal and healthy? What happens when something once regarded as a grave illness becomes a new normal? Okay, so straight away you're going, okay, that's interesting. What happens when something once regarded as a grave illness becomes the new normal? So at one time, homosexuality was something that, it wasn't a good thing. People would say, that's not a good thing, even outside of religious context. If everybody was to choose a same-sex relation, that would definitely be going against the lay of the land in terms of nature. And many people are going to get probably angry with that, but that's the reality. Without even looking at homosexuality from a religious perspective, it's obvious to all that on a naturalistic level, on a human anatomical level, that it leads to the misuse of the body. And people have argued that not all homosexual relationships are physical, and therefore there's not any impact on the body. But ultimately, that is a vain argument, because it's the body is not being used, and what happens when the body engages in intimacy, it's negating a lot of what occurs. So it's really an attack against nature. But over time, what is considered as something that is forbidden in a society ends up becoming normal, and then that continues to shift until other things that are taboo, they also fall by the way and they become normal, and slowly your society begins to degrade. So global dysfunction. The Gemara describes the world state in a generation in which Mashiach will come. It begins with Rabbi Yochanan's portrayal of the dismissal and the painful reality, plagued by one calamity after another, followed by other descriptions of a world in disarray. The Maharal explains why it is fitting for the world at the brink of Mashiach's coming to be in a state of total and complete dysfunction and destruction. Mashiach's arrival will bring a new existence, and the world in that era will appear to be a new world. B'nai Yisrael will be captured from its pre-Mashiach downtrodden state to the greatest heights and honor. And it's a painful reality to know that what is happening in the world in terms of anti-Semitism is a feature of the coming of Mashiach. And and it's a painful thing to wake up every morning to the realization that the pendulum is slowly swinging back to a situation where the Jews are being not very well liked across the face of the earth, and they're going to have a hard time, and that hard time's only going to get worse. And it's quite a hard thing to get around, to get your head around, and seeing what we've seen already, it's sort of almost hard to believe. But that is a part of the era of Mashiach, or an era that is precludes the era of Mashiach, if I'm using the right grammar there. The Maharal reveals that the onset of the new reality necessarily involves the demise of the reality it replaces. Because of this, the world in its pre-Mashiach state will decline to a state of oblivion. So they're going, whoa, okay. The demise of Seder, so the demise of order, I think that's what that's sort of pointing at there. Not so much the demise of a book, but the demise of book is Siddur anyway. So yes, Seder, the demise of an order. The same Gemara cites Rabbi Nehemiah, who describes the era of Mashiach as a time when things will be in disarray and completely devoid of Seder, of order. There you go. For example, when things are normal, young people respect the aged. Yet in the time of Mashiach, the young will shame the elderly, and the elderly will be forced to stand up to honor the young. The Maharal explains that this is the other examples all demonstrate how in the era that will bring Mashiach, the world will lose its normal order, its normal Seder. Rebbe lists 5 specific expressions of that loss of order, the last of which is the prediction that v'nefach kol ha-melkut li minut, that all government will be transformed into minus or minut. The Maharal explains that the term minut generally used to describe someone who leaves faith behind stems from the word min, meaning species or genre. In rejecting faith, a min rejects the fact that Hashem created the world. In so doing, he effectively denies that he was created and removes himself from the realm of creatures. He thereby renders himself min bifnei atzma, a new species that is something other than what Hashem created. And that's very much what we see in the LGBT community. These people are literally reconstructing themselves into new species with the transgenderism and all this sort of thing. And we're seeing a new people sort of make their way on the land. There's just a whole new sort of mindset, and it's invading every genre of thing. Like, it's invading film and television. We're finding it hijacking most sort of public events, like the secular New Year's Eve celebrations seem to at least in the last couple of years, have been hijacked by the LGBT community. Sporting events like the Olympics, even though these are all secular events, they're very much being framed now through the LGBT community. We saw the opening ceremony, I think it was in France. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. With the a sort of a parody of the Last Supper with transgender people and just weird sort of things going on. And so we're seeing a society swiftly going into decline. White, the new normal. The Gemara cites Rava, who brings a pasuk to support this last sign of the generation in the context of zarat, that is the skin malady, the white skin malady a person gets from speaking Lashon Hara. If a person has white discoloration, a sign of zarat, throughout his body, as long as there remains some patch of healthy, unaffected skin, his tamei, his impurity, unaffected skin, his tamei, impure with zarat. I'll read that again. In the context of zarat, if a person has white discoloration, a sign of zarat throughout his body, as long as there remains some patch of healthy, unaffected skin, his tamei, impure with zarat. However, if his entire body is completely white, the Torah remarkably says that he is tahor, is pure. Rava views this pasuk as a source for vinei facha kol ha malkut li minut, being a sign of Mashiach's imminent coming. So the whiteness represents impurity, but if there's still some unaffected skin that hasn't been affected by this whiteness, the person is still considered impure. But if the person becomes completely white, so there's no sign of normalcy, then it is a sign of the imminent coming of Mashiach. So the person is let go and pronounced to be free of the zarat. So, but it is not until all normalcy disappears that that the era of Mashiach will come into play. And so too with the citation of this skin malady that is brought on by evil speech. If a person's skin completely becomes white from head to toe, then that person is deemed pure in the eyes of the Kohen that is examining him, the priest that is examining him, and he's allowed to return to the community. And so in the natural, that doesn't make any sense. You go, hang on, shouldn't that be a sign that he's really, really bad? No, that's a sign that he's good to go, because this is a mashal. This is like a sort of an example of what will happen on a macro scale with the actual whole world, when the world will become full of impurity. Once that impurity is completely engulfed the whole world, then Mashiach will come, and a new world will arrive. The Maharal explains that zarat is a malady that afflicts the normal zurat adam, the stature of a person. It impairs the forces of life within him and subjects him to a death of sorts. Zarat is an illness in the sense that it deviates from one's essential zirut adam and afflicts him. So, it sort of takes him off his path, off his journey, off his goal. Yet when a person is entirely covered in zarat, everything is different. When a person is no longer has any healthy flesh, rather than being a zarat adam, sick with zarat, he becomes an entirely different type of entity. He is a person of zarat. Zarat isn't a condition or an exception to his normal state. Instead, it defines who he is. Such an individual's pure zarat adam has been entirely lost, and the zarat is his new normal. So okay, it's also a kind of a play on this concept of something that is initially forbidden, now becomes accepted, and so that is the new level of normal, and it's a slow decline in the society's spiritual state. Zarat only makes a person tamei if it impairs and afflicts his existence, but when his entire reality of his existence is tahor, in a similar vein, the generation of Mashiach will undergo a complete transformation. The concept of malkut becoming minus or minut is a complete loss of the stature of the world. So somebody who has same-sex attraction fights that desire to be attracted and enter into acts of intimacy with somebody of the same sex, if they continue to fight that desire and sometimes have losses and do tshuva and repent, but continue on the battle, then they haven't achieved this new normalcy of a downgrade. They are still in a condition where they are fighting to remain healthy according to the original concept of what is deemed healthy. But if a person then gives in to that desire and moves in with the person, marries the person, has an ongoing relationship with the person, invests money with the person, then this person has reached a new normal. And that new normal ushers in a transformation and the Messianic era, the era of Mashiach. It's a very, very interesting concept, very controversial for probably a lot of people out there. They say, oh, this is, this is homophobic or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what you say. It's at the end of the day, this is emet. This is the truth. The Maharal explains that this total crumbling of order and normalcy is a necessary phase that sets the stage for a completely new reality. It becomes a new norm. That is a blank slate. That is the precursor of the new reality of Mashiach. And that, boom, that's one subject over. And that's about, 2.5, 3 pages long, about 3 pages long. And then we're into the next subject, which is under the header of the overall section, whatever the name of the section is, which is Exile and Redemption. I think that's, let me just see. Yeah, that's under the header of Exile and Redemption. And then the next section after that, section 5, is the Torah itself, and that's just a little window into all the treasures that this book has to offer. If you are curious about the legend of the Golem and the rabbi that made him, and you don't want to just spend all your time reading these intriguing stories, which will have perhaps no impact, certainly no impact on you doing anything to clean up your act, and you want to actually find out about what actually made him really the man who he was outside of these stories of the Golem, then this is the best place to start. This book will get you on the right track because it'll give you an overview of all his major teachings, or most of his major teachings. He's written many other very powerful works that are big seifers in the Jewish world. Gur Haryeh, which is a commentary on Rashi that he wrote, or Kadash, the commentary on the book of Esther, and there's Netzach Yisrael, the book on Exile and Redemption, which is this kind of where he hits really hard in that. That happened to be a subject that was very important or very impactful. Then Givorat Hashem, and that's talks about the exile in Egypt and the Exodus and all that sorts of things. And he has plenty of other books that he's written, commentaries and so on and so forth, that are just amazing. I haven't gone into this world yet any deeper than just reading this introduction, because I was sort of just mainly beguiled by the legend of the Golem for many years. But it's not until I actually started to do a documentary on the guy, I went, hang on, this guy is actually, and what he actually achieved, his life, in terms of what he produced and what he taught, and certainly in terms of what he taught ethically, is just so on point and so amazing. And there's just so many things in there, thought-provoking things to challenge you and get you to think and maybe sort of change a few things up, which is what the Torah is designed to do. It's designed to clean you up if you'll let it. Anyway, that's it. That's my book review of A Taste of the Maharal, the Brackfeld, I think I've said Brackfield, it's Brackfeld edition, whatever that means, put out by Mosaic Press. Get a hold of it, have a look at it, go through and read it, let me know what you think. And if you've already read it and you have any other insights that I should have touched on that I didn't, feel free to put them down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.